Support comes from Gemma, architects, planners, and designers seeking to bring joy to their clients and communities. Details at gemastl.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. The Festival of Nations is a 2-day multicultural event in Tower Grove Park that St. Louisans have come to anticipate each summer. So when cuts to federal funding hit the International Institute of St. Louis, which has organized the annual event since 1934, fans of the festival were understandably alarmed. Thankfully, the Institute's sponsors stepped up to make sure that the festival would go on as planned. Here to share how and what's in store for new visitors and die-hard fans alike, we have Terry Bates, Director of Marketing and Communications at the International Institute of St. Louis. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So as we noted, there was a good bit of consternation about whether the Festival of Nations would happen this year because of cuts to federal funding. What kinds of conversations took place at the Institute to work around those budget cuts that were specific to the festival?
Well, one thing to note is that the festival itself has never been funded by any of our governmental grants. The festival itself has always been funded by our sponsors and by those who make donations. That being said, when this year had began and there were some challenges that we were facing that we had never faced before, that question of how to be the best stewards of our money towards our mission and towards our goals as a nonprofit, how we would move forward towards that. And when we started kind of talking about this publicly, the outcry of, you're not going to not have the festival, are you? That just started ringing around all the spaces that we were in. And we understood that this is an extension of our mission, making sure that we celebrate the, all the different cultures that make St. Louis home, and how St. Louis itself is multicultural. That is a large portion of our mission. And so it was very gratifying for us to hear that from all of our sponsors and from all of our partners and friends. And so we understood that we had to move forward. Despite what challenges we were facing, we still had to do this. This was important for our community. And so we stepped forward to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. And for those who are not familiar maybe with the International Institute, what is the organization's mission?
So we are a nonprofit that focuses on supporting refugees and immigrants that come to St. Louis to make new lives here. And, throughout the course of the 100 years that we have been in operation, that mission may have changed a little bit, from supporting those from the Srebrenica genocide, from, supporting refugees from World War II. All throughout the course of 100 years, we have focused our mission to making sure that St. Louis, our region, thrives as a result of us helping those thrive that come to St. Louis to make it their home.
Mm-hmm. And resettlement has been severely restricted, yes?
Absolutely.
So how has that affected the work overall that the Institute is doing?
Well, as funding may have changed, the work is still necessary. The need is still there. So, I believe the number might not be completely correct, forgive me, but I think we had 6,000 or so recent over the course of the previous year. And so those resources that we provide are still essential. And so just because there are some changes now in the moment does not mean that the need for the work that we do has left. And so we are still very much focusing on supporting those families who have come here recently, and knowing that right now the moment that we're living in is just a moment in time, and that the needs that we do support are going to exist into the future.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're talking about the Festival of Nations, and it's not being called off. It was just, there was some uncertainty about what was going to happen. What is it that sponsors that did step up tell you about what was motivating them to support the festival?
I think that St. Louis itself is a wonderful example of what happens when a culture becomes welcoming. We have a lot of things that we as St. Louisians really appreciate about our culture, and a lot of these things come from our parents and their parents that have come here and brought their own interests, their own culture, and made it kind of part of ours. And that's very important to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And that's one of the great things about the festival, is that people do celebrate that in their own way. They celebrate it it for their own reasons, because this kind of inclusivity, this kind of welcoming that we as the Institute support means a lot of different things to a lot of different kinds of people, and it's very personal to a lot of them. And this
Such as?
Such as, St. Louis is known for its food. And, if you look at what that means, well, there's a lot of very St. Louis specific kind of cuisine out there, like St. Louis style pizza or a St. Paul sandwich. And these come from all over the world. So, the very thing that we call St. Louis cuisine is very, very obviously multicultural. So that could be very personal to some people who may have been raised with that kind of food their entire life. And so, this is something that to them is nostalgia, and it's also St. Louis, and also this is an opportunity for them to celebrate where it came from and maybe what inclusivity their family has brought to that kind of that kind of environment that we support.
Mm-hmm. And who are among the sponsors who raised their hands first to support the festival that's happening this weekend?
Sure. Well, we have many, so I can't just name them all off. But some of the larger ones that came forward. We have Enterprise, RGA, Volkswagen has came forward to support us this year. Bayer, dozens of organizations, both from St. Louis and outside, have stepped forward to show that this is important to them.
Mm-hmm. Now, this festival, it originated quite some time ago, 1934. But it was based on a different festival that began in the 1920s. How is it that Festival of Nations has evolved over the years?
Well, as you said, yes, that initial festival, I believe, was like kind of a May-oriented festival. Mm-hmm. And so as people in the community came together to celebrate specific aspects of certain cultures, they started adding their culture to this festival, which made it multicultural. And so in 1934, when the International Institute had kind of taken over stewarding that, it really, we kind of moved it towards that direction. We acknowledge that this is a culture of, a celebration of all the different cultures in St. Louis. And then throughout the course of what our community has needed, throughout that time, we have altered it slightly. For a long time, it was kind of a smaller festival. It was more intimate. And then, of course, in 2000, we moved it to Tower Grove Park. It became very, very large. Last year, we were celebrating different artists from all over the world. And this year, we're kind of showing that it's important to, while keep it multicultural and showcase artists who are from all over the world, these artists this year do have kind of a St. Louis tie, and most of them are from St. Louis. Mm. So, so it depends kind of on what the need is. We do kind of evolve to meet that need. This year, we think it's important to showcase what St. Louis has to offer for being a welcoming culture, and so we've brought these different artists from art all over the world, but still who have a St. Louis tie.
Right. Can you provide a couple of examples of people, from or based in based in St. Louis that really, kind of reflect all the culture that is here with origins elsewhere?
Sure. Well, regarding the just the festival in general, we have 80 different countries that are being represented by all the vendors. And regarding our performers, in general, we have dance groups, we have everything kind of really encompassing everything that you kind of might want, but specific artists from different countries who do call St. Louis home, like Farshid Etneko, and forgive me if I pronounced that incorrectly, but dozens of artists from all over St. Louis who've been here for over the course of the last, I want to say, at least 20 years, but they are still multicultural in what they bring to our city.
What is it that people can expect if they've never been? And when was the first time you went to the Festival of Nations?
I have not missed one in 20 years.
Okay.
I'm from the St. Louis area, but I moved around in my youth. And when I came back to St. Louis City about 20 years ago, I have gone to every single one. It's one of my favorite things to do. So when I was offered the position at the International Institute, I was extremely excited to be a part of this event. One thing what I suggest that people do, and what you can expect, is a lot. And so what I mean by that is make sure you have enough time to experience it. Mm-hmm. What my friends and I would do is we would end up finding a spot kind of in the shade. We'd bring our chairs. We would, bring friends, have 5 or 6 people, kind of a nice shady spot, and we would send people out throughout the course of the day to go get different kinds of food and bring it back to the group and just make a day out of it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, later on, you can go shopping for specific, items to take home or as gifts. With Christmas being around the corner, this is a thing that I like to do, to actually go start my Christmas shopping because there's things I'm not going to see anywhere else here. And so, it's just something that you really can't do in just an hour. You kind of want to really give yourself enough time to do it.
Should people come with cash, or is this a cashless kind of situation?
It is. It is cash. I'm sorry. It is no cash. So we are a cashless festival this year. We have been for the last couple of years, and really the reason for this is just security. We just want to make sure that with that people aren't bringing in a whole bunch of cash in their pocket because there's all these things that they do want to see and purchase. We don't want to create any liability for anybody individually. So we are keeping this cashless.
Mm-hmm. So keep the cash at home. Bring a chair or a blanket.
Yeah.
Come hungry. Will there be hand fans given out, or should people bring their own cooling devices?
There is going to be like a cooling bus that's going to be provided, but of course that might not be enough. I would suggest if you do have some way to keep yourself cool, of course, bring that. But a shady area, in my experience, is just the best way to go. You find a tree somewhere, the wind will pick up, and give yourself a nice cold lemonade. It's probably the best way to keep cool in my experience.
And is there one thing that you were especially looking forward to as a long-time festival goer and as part of the staff at the International Institute?
Yeah, this is going to be probably predictable, but the food. It's, there's a lot that this festival offers our community. But when I was a child, sushi was extravagant. And so when I get to go there and I see people bring their kids and have, Eritrean food or things that I, might not even known existed when I was their age, and having them, watching them actually try it and experience all these different cultures, that is my personal favorite part, is just seeing and knowing that we facilitate that experience. It makes me proud to be a St. Louisian, makes me proud to be part of the International Institute. And as far as I'm concerned, I will one day try every single vendor there. I'm not there yet, but, maybe in another 20 years I'll get there.
So you'll bring your own list notebook, running account. Terry
Exactly.
Bates is Director of Marketing and Communications at the International Institute of St. Louis. Terry, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
This episode was produced by Darius Farner.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.